Hello guys, today's topic is grade 12 history, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So that's today's topic, and I'm going to start by explaining the TRC first, then I'm going to be tackling the essay. So without wasting any time, let me begin. The TRC, reasons for and origins of the TRC. The idea for the TRC first came from the ANC. By the way, guys, if you already know about the topic, or if you already have knowledge about the topic, it's best that you skip this part, because I'm going to be explaining the TRC and everything you need to know about the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So you can just skip this part if you already know, if you're sure that you know everything about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You can skip and go to the essay part where I'm explaining the essay in the end. The idea for the TRC first came from the ANC. After the unbanning of the Liberation Organization, the ANC faced accusation of human rights abuses in its training camps in Tanzania and other parts of Southern Africa. It set up an internal inquiry, and it was revealed that human rights violations had occurred in the ANC camps. The ANC's National Executive Committee, which is NEC, accepted the finding but decided that this violation needed to be seen against the overall human rights violations that were perpetrated over the decades in SA. So rather than ANC looking for general amnesty for itself, it called for an independent truth commission so that everyone could be accountable for the past. The options facing South Africans in terms of dealing with the past were either a blanket amnesty, which was not accepted for criminal trials, so would not have worked, or criminal prosecutions, which would have meant that the ANC will not have been able to rely on apartheid security forces to ensure a peaceful election and transition to democracy. So let me explain further what is the TRC, which is Truth Reconciliation Commission. It was essentially a political compromise in the interest of national reconciliation. It involved hearings that were held in public, which made it impossible for South Africans to deny the atrocities carried out by the state in their name. The public hearings also began the process of accepting accountability for the past and of a commitment to making sure that it will never happen again. The promotion of the National Unity and Reconciliation Act of 1995 created the TRC that had to facilitate this process. The chairperson was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who was assisted by 17 commissioners. It was the world's first truth commission that had hearings of victims and perpetrators open to the public, and that published its findings at the end of the process. And by the way, the hearings were broadcast on radio and television in all official language. So let's start with what is TRC Act. This outlined the three preconditions to be met before amnesty could be granted. Or applicants had to make full, truthful disclosure of events and actions around the act of violence for which amnesty was applied. The applicant had to prove he or she had a political motive, and the act could not be out of proportion with the political objective. In other words, amnesty would not be granted to someone who had committed murder because of the political difference of opinion. The role of TRC: to compile as complete a picture as possible of gross human rights violation that had taken place on all sides between 1960 and 1993. To hear testimony from victims and perpetrators. To grant perpetrators amnesty from persecution or civil action, where there was full disclosure and a clear political motivation. To suggest how victims could be compensated through reparations. And I felt like I had to actually include these ones, which is special hearings. These were also held on prisons, women, children, state security, the military and police, the different political parties, the media, the medical profession, and religious communities, among the other particular cases. The TRC had 3 committees. Committee on Human Rights Violation, to hear the public testimonies by victims of gross abuses of human rights. This was not court of the law. Committee on Reparation and Rehabilitation, which investigated cases, gave support and awarded reparations to victims. Committee on Amnesty, which could grant amnesty from prosecution under certain conditions. The hearings. During the first 6 months, the TRC had evidence from the victims. Task of the HRV Committee: investigate human rights abuses between 1960 and 1994, based on statements made by victims and their families to the TRC. Once victims of gross human rights violation were identified, they were referred to the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee. The hearings were conducted by groups of commissioners traveling around the country to take testimony from those who had suffered human rights abuses and to gather information about the atrocities that had been committed. The hearings of the Human Rights Violation Committee, HRVC. These hearings began in the East London City Hall on 16 April 1996. They were held in community halls around SA. Before each hearing, witnesses met with the staff of the commission to make written statement. White South Africans who had voted for apartheid government were for the first time confronted by the crimes that had been committed in its name. Only a proportion of the victims could in fact appear in public hearings. Their participation was to an extent symbolic. The TRC acknowledged the victims' pain publicly, and for many, being able to tell their stories was the beginning of the process of healing and closure. In many cases, victims publicly forgave perpetrators. They publicly forgave perpetrators. Outcomes of TRC. The TRC had a limited time period of 2 years. The overriding objective was to encourage truth-telling. However, in trying to compile the picture of the past, the TRC faced the dilemma of how to validate the subjective truths of painful experiencing memories of human rights violation of the victims, while at the same time producing a suitably objective and authoritative account of the apartheid past. One of the most important aspects of the Truth Reconciliation Commission hearings was the fact that they were held in public. Everyone daily witnessed the pain and suffering that apartheid had caused the fellow South Africans. Major findings of TRC. The final report handed over to President Mandela at the end of October 1998 was contained in 5 volumes of findings on gross human rights violation and found the following. Apartheid was judged to be a crime against humanity. The National Party government of P.W. Botha was found to have been responsible for the murder, torture, arson, abduction, and sabotage. The liberation movements were also found to have been guilty of gross human rights violation. The report also criticized de Klerk's government for activities of third force in an attempt to disrupt the pre-1994 negotiation. The ANC was criticized for civilian casualties in MK operations, the torture and execution in camps in exile, and the use of violence against the opponents. The positive aspects, the TRC as an instrument of reconciliation. The TRC process did serve the purpose of confronting the evils of apartheid, allowing transition from apartheid to democracy to happen in a peaceful, non-violent way. The media played a critical role in process. The public hearings that were broadcast daily on TV and the radio included the testimonies of both victims and perpetrators. This ensured that South Africans could not deny their violent past. The experience of telling stories and hearing confessions was a cathartic experience that began a process of forgiveness and healing between victims and perpetrators. It also brought closure to families who had lost loved ones. For a few, there was a deep sense of guilt and soul searching. So, in conclusion, I would just say for all its flaws, the TRC was a process vital to South Africans' peaceful transition and is highly regarded as a model around the world. Admitting the truth about the past abuses helped restore dignity and identity to the thousands of victims. Dealing with the past was essential for South Africa to move forward. The TRC started the process of reconciliation. So that's it, guys. So now we are going to tackle the essay, as I've promised that I'm going to tackle the essay. So the essay was already written. I do not recite an essay. I cannot recite 500 words. So it was written. Um, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Healing Wounds and Rebuilding Nations. Introduction. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, stands as a pivotal institution in pursuit of justice and healing for nations that have experienced deep-rooted conflict and human rights violation. This essay explores the significance of TRC in addressing past atrocities, fostering conciliation, and laying the foundation for a more inclusive and just society. So we can start by explaining number one, historical context. To comprehend the necessity of the TRC, it is crucial to understand the historical context in which it is emerged. The TRC gained prominence in post-apartheid South Africa, where the wounds and racial segregation, violence, and injustice ran deep. Similar commissions have been established in other countries like Canada, Rwanda, and Chile, each grappling with their own unique histories of conflict and oppression. Number two is objectives and methodology. The primary objective of TRC was to uncover and document the truth about the human rights abuses committed during periods of conflict or repression. This involved gathering testimonies from victims and perpetrators, conducting investigation, and providing a platform for storytelling and public acknowledgement. The TRC employed a restorative justice approach aiming to promote healing, reconciliation, and the prevention of future atrocities. Truth-telling and acknowledgement. Central to the Truth Reconciliation Commission, or TRC, work was the power of the truth telling and acknowledgement. By allowing victims to share their stories and perpetrators to confess their crimes, the TRC provided a cathartic space for the nation to confront its painful past. This process of acknowledgement played a vital role in breaking the circle of silence, fostering empathy, and building a collective memory. Reconciliation and healing. The TRC aimed to reconcile divided societies by promoting dialogue, understanding, and empathy between different groups. Through public hearings and community engagement and the provision of psychological support, the TRC facilitated healing for victims and promoted reconciliation among individuals and communities. By addressing the root causes of conflict and promoting social cohesion, the TRC paved the way for a moved, inclusive, and peaceful society. Criticism and limitations. While TRC represented a significant step towards justice and reconciliation, it also faced criticism and encountered limitations. Some argue that TRC favored amnesty for perpetrators, leading the perception in impunity. Others argue that TRC did not do enough to address socio-economic inequalities stemming from past injustice. These critics highlighted the complexities and challenges associated with the TRC. Legacy and lessons learned. Despite its limitations, the TRC left a lasting legacy. The Commission shed light on the importance of truth, acknowledgement, and reconciliation in addressing historical injustice. It also served as a model for other countries grappling with their own dark histories. The TRC's emphasis on empathy, dialogue, and healing provided valuable lessons for future transitional justice processes. Conclusion. We can conclude by saying the Truth and Reconciliation Commission emerged as a powerful mechanism for healing wounds and rebuilding the nations. By creating a platform for truth-telling, acknowledgement, and reconciliation, the TRC paved the way for societies to confront their past, foster empathy, and towards a more inclusive and just future. While challenges remain, the TRC's legacy serves as a reminder of the transformative power of truth and reconciliation in the journey towards more peaceful and equitable world. So guys, as you can see, it was 16 minutes long. This is an explanation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This is an explanation, the whole topic, and also the essay included. So guys, for more history help, you're not doing for me, you're not doing it for me, by the way, you're doing it for yourself. You can subscribe and share the video if you insist, so that other people get the same knowledge that you got. So if the video has helped you, make sure you subscribe for more helpful video. Peace.